Welcome, everyone. My name is Isabel Di Santiago, and I am the Graduate Pipeline Coordinator for the Office for Graduate Diversity. Live captioning and ASL interpretation are available, and this session is being recorded. Recordings will be shared after editing to ensure accessibility. As questions come up for you, please put them in the Q&A. Thank you all for joining us for this session of Belong at Berkeley on Funding 101 Master's Edition. This is an exciting moment for you all, and we're glad to have you with us. Today, we'll be focusing on a key part of your graduate journey, how to fund it. In this session, our Fellowships Office will provide an overview of funding offers and opportunities for master's and professional students. We'll conclude with a Q&A section, including insights from student panelists. Next slide. So it may not be possible for us to address all of your questions, but you can always reach out to the Office for Graduate Diversity at grad.diversity@berkeley.edu or meet with a graduate and with a diversity and community fellow. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Deanne Rivera from Graduate Student Funding, who will lead the rest of this session.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Deanne. On the call this afternoon, we have a few fellowship team members as well. So if you have questions, you can put them in the Q&A section, and during this presentation, they will try to answer as many questions as possible. So I just wanted to highlight them. It's Iris is on the call, Ava is on the call, and so is Michael. And so they're going to be the ones who will be addressing your questions should you have any this afternoon. But I just want to thank you all for coming. We are happy to be here, and we're happy to share a lot of information about this next exciting step for you. Next slide. Next slide, sorry. Wait, hold on. Can we go back up one more? There we go. Okay. So today's session, just to give you an overview of what we're going to talk about, we're going to talk about a few things. We're going to talk about the total cost of attendance, the difference between department funding and possible graduate division funding, student appointments, and then also parent and caregiver funding. Our intention is to cover what goes into building your program, your cost in your programs, and other things that are designed to assume your expenses. We're going to touch on a few of these. You may have questions and lots of, there may be some confusion about, what did she say again? But don't worry, we're here to help answer and guide you. Next. So for those of you who are familiar with your department, you may have been in contact with them. You may not really know who you need to contact within your department. But your primary source of support while you are here as a student is going to be your department. In every department, every program has what's called a Graduate Student Affairs Officer. The acronym is GSAO, and you'll probably hear that thrown around a lot in the next few months. But that is going to be your main point of contact for all of your academic and funding questions. If you're not sure of who your GSAO is, they are usually listed on your program's website. So don't panic if you don't know who that is right now or today. You will be able to look up that information, or perhaps more correspondence will be coming from your department that outlines who your GSAO is. Next slide. So there's different fee structures when we talk about master's degrees. So there's an academic master's, and that particular program is automatically fed into a PhD program. So that is one program. So if you're here in one of those programs, all of this information will definitely apply to you. And then if you are in a transit, like a program that goes right into a PhD, you might want to also revisit the PhD funding webinar that we did this morning once that's available, because it has a lot of information about that. Most of you, I would assume, are in the professional master's program, There's lots of different programs that we offer at Berkeley, but you're probably in a business, public health, social welfare, city regional planning, any of those programs, you're in the right place. And all of the professional master's programs are going to actually assess an additional tuition charge, additional fee, and it's called a professional degree supplemental tuition. So that is how you know you are in a professional program. And then lastly, there's self-supporting master's programs. And self-supporting programs are generally those programs where you either meet online or it's a one-year program, sometimes on weekends. It's a program that's slightly separate from the main campus structure, and those have their own funding rules and programs within those set of self-supporting programs. Next. So eligibility for funding, specifically financial aid, is based around your estimated cost of attendance. So your budget is going to look like tuition, fees, room and board, whether you live off campus or on campus, there is an allowance for that. Books and supplies, transportation, personal expenses, and health insurance. Now, this is built all around a 9-month year for you because that's technically the academic year is 9 months. Once you receive information about your specific total cost and you take a look and you're like, no, I need more allocation for housing. My housing is way more than what you're estimating it to be, or my transportation is way more than what you're estimating it to be. You can actually reach out to our financial aid office and let them know, and they will have you complete what's called a cost of attendance adjustment. And that is where you would put your information in, you would submit any supporting documents for that, and then they can take a look and perhaps increase your cost of attendance, making room for more support. Next slide. So what's the main source of support for for master's students? The first thing you're going to want to do is file a FAFSA. And FAFSA is a tool that is designed to award for specific federal funding. And we know that there's a lot of questions around that. But for right now, we don't know of any changes that will be happening. So we're going to move forward with the current information that we do have. So the FAFSA is just a snapshot of your financial information. The information that is on there allows for federal access to loans as well as a work study. And we do encourage all graduate students to file a FAFSA, just to have it on file in case there's any emergencies that you might have. Sometimes there are different programs that will look at a FAFSA for eligibility. So we do encourage everyone, if they're able, to file a FAFSA or a DREAM Act application. Some considerations when we talk about funding. Some considerations when we talk about funding and the fees. It may look different. So departments have their own funding that includes endowments, grants, and appointments and employment. We'll get into that in a little bit. And then the campus overall, you may find support there. So within the graduate division, which we are the fellowships team, different centers and then research groups also can provide funding and support for you and your program. So there's a combination of different programs that can help make up your total costs for your degree. So we're going to get into a little bit about student appointments because that's a pretty big program here. Student appointments are basically where a student would work on campus. And there's a few different types. So you can find yourself as an instructor, a researcher, could be a tutor, a reader, or an assistant. So that, that's definitely something. There's different areas of being a student appointment. Based on the amount of hours you work and based on the type of an appointment you may have your in-state graduate tuition and fees covered. plus a salary. What a fee remission does not cover is any charges like professional development. That tuition is not covered by remission. And sometimes if you have a non-resident tuition, sometimes that is not covered as well. It really does depend on the type of appointment that you may have. And all of your questions about the type of appointment can be answered by your hiring department. So just know that you won't be alone in trying to navigate what type of appointment you do have. Let's get into a little bit about graduate funding. So graduate funding, there's a lot of information on our website. If you want to take a look at it, you can find information about policy information. So, what are our policies surrounding funding? The appointment handbook, because the student appointment program is so large and there's a lot of rules around it, you might want to go on there and take a look about what you can and cannot expect with an appointment. And then lastly, division contacts. So for example, I am your division contact for all of the professional master's programs. So if you have specific questions about your funding, you are more than welcome to contact myself. But if you need any other, to reach out to any other person to ask any other questions, all of our contact information is listed on that website as well. At Berkeley here, what we have a program that's pretty special. It's called our Basic Needs Program. And we have a physical location that's actually in the student union. And at that physical location, you can expect support with completing Medi-Cal forms, CalFresh forms. There is a food pantry. There are other resources for you should you be experiencing any housing, food, healthcare, or technology needs. They also will provide, the Basic Needs also has an application for funding. Again, if you find yourself in an emergency situation or a one-time situation where you are unable to meet your housing costs or you have some food insecurity, whatever the case is, you are more than welcome to apply to the Basic Needs Fund for short-term support and relief. And so I would encourage you, if you ever find yourself in a situation like that, to please reach out to the Basic Needs Office or to the graduate division so that we can help guide you to what program is going to be best for you. If there's any parents on the call or any caregivers on the call, we have specific programs designed for you. So parent and caregiver grants are administered through the graduate division, which is us, basically. And it provides need-based grant money for parents up to $13,000 a year and $8,000 a year for caregivers. And what that does is that there's no restrictions on those funds. You can use that for whatever you need to use it for. It can be used for tuition if you wanted to. It can be used for, childcare. It can be used for whatever you need it to help support you as a student. One thing that it will not do is it will not apply directly to any charges on your student account. So if you owe tuition or fees or health insurance, whatever that looks like, and you receive a grant, that will not apply to your fees. That is going to go automatically to you, the parent, or to the caregiver as a refund. And then if you wanted to turn around and pay any fees, you would have to do that separately. So it might be more than one transaction if you're looking to have that funding cover any expenses on your student account. The application for parents and caregivers opens around July 1 on our graduate division website. So please note that July 1 is when it opens for this next academic year. And then you will generally hear back if you have received a parent grant by mid-August is when you know that if you would receive one. So this particular grant is not, you will not know the outcome before the SIR date. It is something that is reviewed and delivered after the fact, very late summer, right before the spring semester. For parents one of the other highlights of an academic appointment is that you do have some accommodations. So childbirth accommodation funding, you are entitled to leave. If you have an appointment and you have dependents, they may be eligible for campus health coverage. And then lastly, if you have a child or a dependent, there are programs on campus that can provide backup childcare and or childcare reimbursement. And so all of that is housed in our appointments handbook, and you would be able to read over that. But it's something that that is available for parents and caregivers as we hope to support you all in your time here. Best practices as a graduate student, and I say this for best loan practices, really. Some of you may have borrowed as an undergraduate, and you just need to know that as of now, you don't need to make any payments while you're enrolled as a student. You can put that in a forbearance, or you can just go ahead and keep that. You're in a registered student, so no payments should be required. There are still loan forgiveness programs out there. I know there's a lot of news about what's happening at the federal level with loan forgiveness, but there are some that are still available out there. And it will, I say this with a little bit of hope that the basic foundation of loan forgiveness does not go away. So if you are a teacher or you're working in any particular field of healthcare, you might have your loans forgiven. But again, I say that hopefully, that's not a guarantee. And then also what we want to really encourage you all to do is to communicate any issues, both financial, academic, with your GSAO, because again, they are your first point of contact for helping you navigate whatever challenge that you are having. And again, if you do need to know who your GSAO is, it should be on your program's website. Outside funding searches is something that we get a lot of questions about. And so there's a few that we can share with you. Scholarship Connection is one, pretty comprehensive website. You put in some of your search information and it will kind of give you a list of what is out there. It's updated pretty frequently, but I would also check back like once a week, maybe twice a month. It just kind of depends on the free time that you have. Our colleagues at UCLA have developed a search for outside funding called GRAPES. And it's pretty comprehensive. You actually can put in what your major is. You can put in a lot of different demographic information. It will help support. It'll pull up, any type of opportunity that it may be a fit for you. So something to just keep in mind. And then lastly, with our graduate division fellowships, you can take a look at our website and see, hey, this might apply to me. Can I go ahead and apply for it? And you can reach out to us. You can, send us an email, or you can take a look at what's available and post it on the website and see if that's something that that you might want to apply for. But anyway, you can definitely always contact us for information or clarification. Next slide. Okay, so again, we can't stress enough, your department advisor is going to be your number one person to contact with any questions, challenges that you might have under academic, research information, advising, any of that, you're going to go to your department advisor. If you're looking to do a cost of attendance increase or an adjustment for your federal loans, that's going to be the financial aid office. You can contact them via email, you can call them, you can stop by. and actually talk to a person if you needed to. So there's different areas in which you can contact them, and I would encourage you to check their hours on their website. For questions around academic appointments, that would be where you would work on campus, student employment. First, if you're looking for a position, you would start with your department. Your department would then be able to share resources about how to, what appointments are available within their department or that they know of outside of their department. International students, if we have any international students here on the call, there is a separate office for international students that can help navigate you through all of your challenges as an international student, from visas to funding to accommodations. All of that can be addressed within the Berkeley International Office. And then lastly, undocumented students, if there are any documented students on the call, we do have a lot of resources that you would be able to access. And so again, I would just encourage all of you to really know who to contact with your questions and who's going to be your first line of communication with. It can get confusing, and so we understand that. And if you ever wind up back here, we can definitely point you into the right direction onto where to go. With that, I know that was a lot of information, but we have a student panel, a student here that can help answer additional questions, more specific. And then also, if your questions haven't been answered in the Q&A, and if we have some time, and then at the end, we can definitely go through those questions together as well.
Thank you again for that insightful, informative presentation. We'll now transition into, yes, our discussion with our student panelists. So next slide, please. I'd like to invite Juan to briefly introduce themselves. If you can introduce yourself, your name, pronouns if you choose, your undergrad institution, and current department or and program.
Sure, thank you. My name is Juan Flores. My pronouns are he, him, his. My undergrad institution is actually UC Berkeley. And my current program, I'm a concurrent student in the School of Social Welfare and the Masters of Public Policy at the Goldman School.
Thank you. So we do have just a few questions prepared, but I know we have we've seen a lot of questions also come in through the chat. But we'll start with our first question. Can you tell us a bit about your experience navigating the funding process as a newly admitted student in your program? And specifically, what aspects were important to you as you were making your decision about coming to UC Berkeley for graduate school?
Sure. So the way I navigated, in my programs, I was actually offered a fellowship, a one-year fellowship, and that actually covered my tuition and fees. And except since the master's program I'm in is considered a professional program, one of my fellowships did not cover the professional degree fee, and so through the fellowship that didn't cover. However, my program did cover that professional fee, so I would basically end up paying out of pocket for 1 year of my 3-year program. Navigating the financial process can be stressful and perhaps sometimes overwhelming. However, navigating this process, I was in constant communication with advisors from both schools. In addition, I was also in communication with the financial aid office. Additionally to that, I always navigate outside fellowships. I think fellowships that relate to my interests are important, or anything that can kind of build networks, establish, gain some more skills, or establish like a relationship with people who I would want to work once I graduate. It was important, and so I guess I was able to take care of a few things, just navigating the financial aid process, the financial process of attending UC Berkeley and these two programs, which can and are expensive. However, I do want to mention that there's funding opportunities as mentioned earlier, and you could be a graduate student advisor, GSI, a reader, and also there are research opportunities and fellowship programs outside of the professional degree in which you're at. And so navigating those two processes seemed, like a lot, but once I created a spreadsheet and kind of like navigated which fellowships or funding opportunities applied to me, it just became an easier process of like, navigating the websites, talking to people, reaching out to folks who were on the website, who I can connect with, and to kind of seek more clarity into what was actually covered about the fellowship. And so that's kind of like the way in which I've navigated the process of paying for my education.
Mm. Thank you. Thank you for that one. A follow-up question to that is, considering that our audience are newly admitted graduate students, is there any advice that you would provide in terms of to newly admitted students about the most important steps to take when reviewing and understanding like how they're going to fund their master's or professional program degree?
Yes, some things I would advise on is if you were offered a package to help fund for your education, I would read carefully the stipulations that it has. What it does it fund? What doesn't it fund? How long is this funding for? If this fellowship covers tuition and fees, or does it also include a stipend? I think those are something that I would advise students to read carefully if they were offered a financial package. If you were not offered a package, I would also reach out to the advisors or the school at which you applied, and actually, discuss, the ability to negotiate, perhaps getting um, some aid to assist you to pay for school. And this could be simple as like if you were offered a package, you're getting your fees and tuition paid. Like, can they increase, for instance, can they add a stipend? And that's kind of like pocket money for you to pay outside expenses. That would be one of my suggestions. If you weren't offered any financial aid, I would also reach out. There is opportunities for folks to obtain aid, whether that's a stipend or a tuition being paid for. So those are some of the things I would look into and be clear on reading. What does your fellowship entail in terms of like what does it pay or what doesn't it pay? So being clear on your financial aid package. So asking questions is a good way to be clear on this, and also being able to advocate for yourself. I would suggest advocating for yourself. There is funding opportunities um, in the school, especially at UC Berkeley. There are opportunities. So I wouldn't, to completely disregard your admission based off like not having funding. There are opportunities on and off campus. So I just want to stress that a little. Yeah, and also plan for gaps. My financial aid package, it's for my academic year, and I also get a stipend. It varies um, because I am in two different programs, so the financial aid varies. But one thing I would be mindful of is the gap. For instance, in the summer, obviously, like what will you do? How will you pay your rent for the summer? And so I would be mindful of that, other than reading, and other than being clear with what your financial aid package offers.
Mhm. And then in looking back in terms of when you were admitted and you were deciding on whether or not you were going to attend UC Berkeley, is there anything that you would now in retrospect do differently in terms of like, the funding aspect of planning, and anything that you would do differently now?
Yeah, yes, I would actually. Although I felt like I was very much prepared and I was looking at funding, um, outside of UC Berkeley, for instance, in the Masters of Social Welfare program, there's a lot of funding, especially through the state of California. I actually received a grant from HCI, so there are grants and funding. However, given that I was admitted, and I think a lot of scholarships and financial aid opportunities outside of the school were actually, they had deadlines very close. So you have to kind of basically apply the year before. And so I guess preparing like now would be a good start. And so I think in retrospect, I would have prepared even before kind of, waiting for my admission or not, I would prepare. So I think now is a good time to look at funding opportunities and not just wait till like last minute. And there are a lot of opportunities, like I've mentioned, and fellowship opportunities. So I would start looking now.
And there is a question here. It says, did you GSI or I lost the question. Have you held a GSI or GSR to help you pay for your education? If so, do you have any tips for securing those positions?
I actually, given my financial aid package in terms of fellowships and other research opportunities and outside fellowships and scholarships that I managed, like I kind of invested my time in that. And so I didn't have to GSI or be a reader, but there are a lot of students in my program who actually are readers or GSIs or tutors. And so I know that there's always opportunities for folks to be tutors or readers in areas that they have skills in. And if you're not really well versed in the class material or the certain skills that some of these GSI positions or reader positions entail, as long as you're willing to learn and have the time and capacity for it, then there are opportunities for you to get a position. So I wouldn't shy away again of thinking like, oh, there's no ways of paying this. Like there are a lot of students who manage, and it's very doable. And yeah, I know people who have no background, for instance, in sociology, and they actually have reader positions in this department. And being a reader is basically, helping. It's not really teaching a course. It's more so grading, running through course materials during like office hours. So it depends also like reader or you want to be a graduate student instructor. So there's various opportunities to keep it short.
Thank you. There's also another question here that says, if you had any suggestions about finding opportunities outside of Berkeley, or where? Where would you suggest like finding opportunities outside of Berkeley?
Well,
and assuming funding, maybe. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, regarding funding, there are a lot of fellowship opportunities. I usually type in based on my interest, put like fellowship for social work or fellowship for public policy students or fellowship depending on how you identify. And those usually results. So I've done a lot of Google search. That's one way in which I would advise. There's also, I know at UC Berkeley, their page has a lot of, they have opportunities for grants on and off campus. So there's also a website you can navigate through Berkeley. Hopefully that answers the question, but knowing that this is the Bay Area, there's vast opportunities for you to obtain funding. It's just a matter of like looking, and if like obviously you fall under the criteria, and applying for it.
I do see a few additional questions regarding, and maybe Dan, this is something that you can also respond to, but there's questions about fees, like if it's possible to like waive, like I think there was a question about SHIP, I guess waiving certain fees if that's something that's possible. And also I think there's a question on here asking you, Juan, if you had waived any of those.
Okay.
I'm going to jump in about SHIP. Yes, the health insurance can be waived if you already have your own coverage. So once you're enrolled over the summer, you will receive lots of information. But part of that information is going to be your ability to opt out of the university health insurance and document that you are already covered by another plan.
And I guess I'll jump in and add, I actually did waive SHIP, knowing that this is costly. Insurance can be costly. If you do have another provider, you can waive SHIP. I would just suggest that you transfer your insurance here because UC Berkeley criteria will not waive your SHIP if you do not have an insurance provider. I believe it's within 50 miles, but I'm going to say to play it safe within 25-mile radius of UC campus. So if you do have insurance, I would transfer that to an area near campus and save yourself a couple $1,000s.
There's also a question on here. If you're being considered for a fellowship at the moment and results are supposed to come out March 15th, do you recommend waiting to see what is offered and then looking into other fellowships or opportunities? In your experience, Juan, in terms of fellowships?
I wouldn't wait for anything. I mean, you can, but personally, I wouldn't wait. I would definitely start searching for funding because usually, at least in my experience, the fellowships that I've obtained come with like a $5,000 stipend. Tuitions and fees are usually paid for. However, obviously, applying to other fellowships or scholarships, that will be money that you can use for like housing or other educational expenses.
We also got a question about if someone hasn't been appointed by any department advisor, how do I reach out to them? And then I'll also add, do you have any advice also in terms of approaching your department or for any additional questions or resources about funding?
I actually missed the first part of the question,
sorry.
but
The first part of the question was, I haven't been appointed any department advisor. How do I reach out to them?
okay. Yeah, I mean, the departments the school you applied to and were accepted, they usually have advisors. So even though you weren't appointed one, I'm automatically assume that, well, not assume, I know that you have an advisor. The departments do have advisors, and so I would reach out to them. And then your second part of the question, if you can
Yeah,
repeat it.
the second part that I asked was, do you have any advice in terms of reaching out to your department for additional funding opportunities or resources?
Yeah, sure. So if, for instance, schools are competitive, so an admission is something that basically says like they want you as a student and want you in their program. If you did apply to other programs, this is probably common knowledge, but if you did apply to other programs and were offered funding, for instance, at another school, I think that's a way in which you can negotiate for some funding, see if your program will match you or increase your funding. In terms of reaching out to advisors, I mean, the worst thing they can say is like they don't have funding. But I would definitely reach out, like a simple email talking about funding is something I prefer to meet in person. So you can send an email and to see if you can, sign up for their office hours or meet with them. I would personally do Zoom or in person, just because I appreciate that contact and relationship building.
There's also some questions, and I'll open it up as well to Deanne, regarding like international students, if they're eligible to work as GSIs, readers, or tutors.
Yes, and I would probably check with your department to see what type of requirements would be put in place for work status information.
And then additionally, who can someone contact for financial aid as an international student? or yes, as an international student. Um,
I would say that if you're an international student, your first stop should be the international office for any questions about funding. And then they would be able to share other resources within or contact people within the financial aid office if that was appropriate.
Thank you. And there's another question on here. Where can, and this one, says, where can I find available JSI, JSR positions? Do I need to accept an admissions offer to apply? Is there any advice regarding that?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So if you are interested in starting the search for a student appointment, probably right now, because we're still in the spring semester and we haven't started really, really opening up anything for the fall yet, I would contact your department and just ask what to expect as far as the amount of appointments that they would have, what type are they, anything that they would be able to share with you within the department. One thing that you may also want to check into is just because, let's say, you're a student in education, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to, be in the school of education to have an academic appointment. If you have other interests in other departments, I would also encourage you to reach out to other departments to see, again, do you have student appointments coming up in the fall? What type are they? What can I expect? How can I apply? Those type of things are really important to know. So again, reach out to the department. They're going to be your first line of giving you all of that information.
If students are, I guess there's a question on here that says if they're accepted, if they accept admissions offer for their master's program, but then later find that they're unable to secure enough funding, do they is it okay to cancel their admissions offer, or is there a certain deadline? Or is there a way to kind of navigate that situation?
I would probably, for that question, I would probably reach out to our admissions office to find out what the policy is on canceling an acceptance, and all of that, how you would go about doing that.
Mhm.
That would be probably best answered by our admissions colleagues.
Thank you. So there's another question on here. Could you provide any additional guidance regarding for international students if it's to locate like funding resources, any guidance? Is it any guidance for that for international students?
For international students, again, the search information that we provided to you, the online search information, the UCLA Grapes website is pretty good at zeroing in on information that is specifically for the student. And then again, the international office is going to be a good resource for international students. And then also it's just nice if you have questions about your funding, if you might have questions about academic advisement or anything like that, the bio office can help you navigate those type of questions and provide resources as well.
And there was a question here for Juan. Juan, you mentioned getting a fellowship to cover fees for a year. Does that mean you have, or what happens if you're unable to cover the fees for like the rest of your years? I guess if we can speak a little bit more about that experience.
So what was not covered from, so I received a grant from the graduate division, Deanne's who actually part of this, and that did not cover my professional degree fees. That was actually covered through my current department, so that was covered. My third year, I've been basically looking and applying for fellowships and scholarships that I can currently do now in order to save for my third year. So I'm planning ahead, and so that's an option for you to do that. In addition to that, if you're a student who, you know, if you're a student with disabilities, I also recommend the Department of Rehabilitation. That's also another avenue for students who can navigate, who want to navigate like funding. There's opportunities for transportation, partially paying your tuition and fees as well. Again, if this is for specifically for students with disabilities. Um, but yeah, so planning ahead for my third year is important. So that's why I mentioned like applying and continue to look for opportunities. Um, or, for my third year, I can also ask my department to see if there's additional funding for me to continue to like pay for, even if it is just for the tuition. So yes, hopefully that's helpful.
Thank you. So there was a question on here as well that said, how should we prepare to negotiate if we're still deciding between programs? Any advice you can provide?
Yeah, well, I can jump in from word of mouth here at students. I know there's a lot of students who want to negotiate. If you're just still deciding on programs and money is a factor, then I would start negotiating now. If you received a financial aid offer from one school, I think I would use that to leverage some aid for another department, a school perhaps that didn't offer you any funding, but you want to attend. So I think leveraging that, I would start now.
And then, do you have any recommended strategies for applying for external aid? That's another question that came up.
Um, no, no, nothing at all. But I think specifically, there are links on the website. At UC Berkeley has various websites and funding opportunities. There's also travel grants, conference grants, which I've been a recipient of. So those are ways to also pay for, other ways to connect and network with folks. But I'm just looking to see what are your interests, and I think I would go from there. But if you're open for anything, there's also research opportunities, as I mentioned. There's research programs that allow you to kind of, get some funding for doing work that you are passionate about or that you're interested in. And so I think doing that would be helpful. I've actually had like two fellowships outside of the institution, and they've been extremely, I've done like case studies. I've done interviews um, with folks outside in different, nonprofits or for profits. So I guess looking at what are your options, your interests, I would start from there. But if you're just looking for any opportunity to pay for school, then I think, just looking at like what's available in the community or even in San Francisco area, in the entire Bay Area, actually, I would suggest looking into that.
Mhm. And I also want to ask Deanne, there's a question on here that says, is there a time frame we should expect to hear about funding packages if you have not heard back yet?
So for those of you who have maybe filed a FAFSA and maybe are awaiting what loan eligibility you might have, I know that the financial aid office will put that information out closer to April. And then if you are looking for information specifically from your department, again, you would want to reach out to them at any point during your enrollment process to see if they're sharing any information at this time, or or what to expect when they can send out some information. along those lines, can I jump in? Because along those lines, I'm looking at the Q&A, and there's a handful of questions about leveraging, negotiating for more aid after accepting admission. And the answer to that is you are welcome to contact your department and speak to your advisor at any point in your time here at Berkeley, even if that means you haven't, you've already accepted your offer. The window doesn't close on discussion about funding after you've accepted your offer. So I would encourage you, even if you've already accepted your admission, to definitely talk to your department about funding opportunities, because not only is that possibly for this current year, but they may have opportunities to share with you for once you've been a student here. So maybe the following year or the following semester. So it's always a good idea to question your department about any potential funding.
And I just want to say that we have about 5 minutes remaining, and I wanted to just ask a final question. Given that these are our audience's newly admitted students, is there anything about if you could share anything about UC Berkeley, any aspects that are like your favorites, about campus?
Yeah, I know given that everything's expensive, school's expensive, I would really think about what are the outcomes. At least I think about like what is the outcome of me investing in my education and looking at that. And I actually love Berkeley, which is why I applied again as a graduate student. There is community. You can find your community. There are a lot of opportunities, whether it's research or funding. There's ways in which you can get involved with the community, like outside of Berkeley. And so just, I'm from San Diego, California, and, I came to, really appreciate the Bay Area for like a lot of advocacy, organizing opportunities. And so, I know that funding, this is a topic of discussion. I know that funding sometimes can, deter folks, but I would really suggest in like, if you want a place where you want to belong, if you want a place where you want to excel and build some camaraderie community, I think Berkeley is definitely a place where you can do that. I say that through experience and genuine. I don't get paid for this, and so yeah, if depends what you want, how you see your journey. Definitely Berkeley is a place to consider.
Thank you, Juan. And so I just want to wrap up the webinar. I know we have many questions in the chat that we're not able to get to entirely, but I do want to share again that you can still contact our Office for Graduate Diversity. And if Jessica, if you can put up the slides for the contact us page. Yeah, so we hope that you'll join us for the remaining sessions of Belong at Berkeley. And as a reminder, our sessions are being recorded and will be shared after being edited for accessibility. If you still have questions, please reach out to our Office for Graduate Diversity or meet with a diversity and community fellow. And we'll put in the chats our email for the Office for Graduate Diversity, and as well as the link to our diversity and community fellows if you'd like to meet with them and ask them about any questions as well. And so again, I just want to thank you for joining us, and have a great rest of your day, and we hope to see you in the next sessions as well. Thank you.